top 7 best places to be before and during World War III. Today I prepared a special list of geographic locations, specifically countries, that I believe are considered safe during World War III, if and when it starts. Before we're going to talk about the best locations, I wanted to stress the importance of having a residence permit in a different country. No matter what passport you may hold, it is really important for you to have residency in another country for the simple reason that you never know what's going to happen. You just don't know. There's so many geopolitical factors that you and I have no control over that can change your life tomorrow or even today. If things go south, anything's possible in today's world. Considering the geopolitical problems that we're seeing right now, anything is possible. Considering that we're having a war in Ukraine, that we're having a war in Gaza, and who knows what will happen in 2024 when the general election happens in Taiwan. There's also a general election in the United States of America. We don't know what will happen. There's so many factors that are outside of your control. But what you can do is you can prepare yourself to get a residence permit now, because it's always better to have a residence permit and not need it than not have it and need it. This is common sense stuff, so I'm not telling you anything new here. The first country I wanted to share with you is Mexico. And this sounds maybe contradictory because, hey, Mexico is so close to the United States of America. Well, that's why it's a good country, because if you have to get out, like if this is last minute, if you haven't done your homework or you haven't had a chance to get a residence permit for different reasons, you're like, hey, let me turn on my car, let me drive across one of the southern borders in Texas and California and New Mexico and Arizona, wherever, and let me get into Mexico, because once you're in Mexico, you're in a neutral country. Mexico is not part of NATO. Mexico does not like weighing in on certain conflicts like the Ukraine conflict, like what's going on in Gaza. Mexico is a pretty neutral place, and that's good. I know it borders America to the north, United States of America to the north. However, it's better getting into Mexico than being in a NATO country, especially the head of the NATO country, which is America. So you can drive your car into Mexico, you cross into Mexico, and then once you left Mexico, you can get further and deeper into Central America. Now, this is a great option to have. So I think Mexico is great if you want to get a residence permit for Mexico. What you can do is you can apply for it at the consulate in your home country. If you're already in Mexico, then we can help you get a residence permit in Mexico. Got to make sure you have all your documents, and you can apply for it inside of Mexico. So you don't have to do it in your home country. If you're coming from America, if you're coming from Canada or any other country, you can apply for it inside Mexico, assuming you have all documentation ready to go. In Mexico, you can get temporary residency, you can get permanent residency, you can qualify by proving savings, and that amount changes every year. Country number 2 that will probably be a safe bet during World War III is New Caledonia, a country that a lot of people have never heard of. New Caledonia is an ex-French colony. It is located in the South Pacific. It's quite close to Australia and also New Zealand. New Caledonia is a very obscure location. Like I said, a lot of people have never heard of it. People in New Caledonia speak French. And what's good about New Caledonia, if you have a European passport, actually quite easy for you to move from an EU country to New Caledonia. European Union citizens have this special privilege. You can compare to an American, wanting to live in Puerto Rico, wanting to live in Guam, wanting to live in the US Virgin Islands or any other overseas US territory that you can easily access with an American passport. For Europe, there are several places like that as well. Like I said, French Guiana and New Caledonia are 2 of them, based on New Caledonia's geographic location and military neutrality. I know it's kind of considered part of Europe, but in many ways it really isn't. I mean, there's a lot of French influence. I think it would be a pretty safe bet during World War III, and it would be far away from the action. Country number 3, Paraguay. Paraguay is a place that we've been talking about a lot on the channel, and it checks most boxes. It really does. And in the event of a large-scale war, say a nuclear war, World War III, Paraguay is most likely a safe bet. Given its geographic location, far away from the action, far away from Europe, far away from North America, Paraguay is probably a safe bet. What's also great about Paraguay is its territorial tax system. If you become a resident of Paraguay, you can consume most overseas income that's generated outside of Paraguay tax-free. For local income, you pay 10% taxes. Many things can be deducted. On corporate income, you pay 10% taxes. And Paraguay is a pretty liberal country. It's pretty easy to get a residence permit, and we help our clients get residency in Paraguay. We've been recommending Paraguay for about a year now. We love the place. Many Europeans, Germans, Austrians, other Europeans moved to South America during past wars. They established a new home there. Who knows? This might happen again. I mean, it already started. In fact, we're seeing quite a bit of an increase in immigration from Europe to South America. We're seeing it already, and this trend is only expected to accelerate. Why? There are more conflicts, rising inflation, lots of geopolitical problems in Europe, lots of potential dangers. People are leaving Europe and they're moving into South America for all kinds of different reasons. So Paraguay is a great place. Then next, let's jump over to Africa, a continent that is highly underrated, that our YouTubers and we don't talk about Africa that much. I think we should be paying more attention to Africa. Why? It's probably the most underrated continent in terms of opportunity. Africa is a great place, especially during World War III. Africa is interesting because, again, it's a neutral place, like the countries are neutral. I know that South Africa is part of BRICS. However, we don't know how World War III might pan out and if the BRICS alliance will hold or not, or if these countries will get involved. I mean, we don't know that. We also don't know if NATO countries will stay in NATO if and when World War III starts. There could be many countries leaving NATO as soon as World War III has begun. There's really no way of knowing, because if a country has everything to lose and nothing to gain, it might as well leave an alliance. And the same can be said about both NATO and BRICS. So there's no guarantee here. Anything's possible. But a place like Ghana, very, very interesting. And so many Americans now have moved to Ghana in recent years because it is one of the African countries with the highest standard of living. It is a pretty organized country. You know, it has a lot going for it. It's growing. It's got a growing economy. It has a lot to offer. Like, Ghana is a very interesting place, and more people should be looking into it. Then the next country I wanted to discuss with you is Singapore. Singapore is a country, it's definitely neutral. It's located in Southeast Asia. It's also referred to as the Lion City. It attracts a lot of high-profile people, including entrepreneurs, investors, all kinds of different people. Bitcoin sharks, right? So many people, rich people, have moved to Singapore in recent years. One of the biggest downsides of living or getting into Singapore, you have to get into the country first, is it's very hard to get a residence permit. Yeah, you can get certain types of visas, but getting real permanent residence in Singapore, and let's not even talk about becoming a citizen, is difficult. It was much easier 10, 15 years ago than it is today. Singapore has kind of tightened up. But if you have the capital, if you have deep pockets and you're willing to put your money at risk and invest it in Singapore, but we're talking about substantial investments, Singapore might be a good option for you, but it doesn't fit the criteria. It doesn't, like, most people just don't have the means to get into Singapore. But during something like World War III, Singapore would most likely be a safe bet. Next up, the Canary Islands. And there's a specific reason why I mentioned the Canary Islands. First of all, the Canary Islands, this is where I'm at right now. The Canary Islands are part of the European Union, part of Europe, meaning if you have a European Union passport, this is probably one of the easiest places to get to. This is the island of Tenerife. I'm here. It's pretty easy to get here. You can fly to Madrid. In fact, you don't even have to do that. Like, if you want to arrive in Tenerife South, at Tenerife South Airport, you got flights to pretty much anywhere in Europe, like any major city you can fly to. You know, daily flights or a couple flights a week. So it's pretty easy to get here. And like I said, because it is part of the European Union, it's really easy to stay here. And based on its geographic location, just look up where Tenerife or where the Canary Islands are located. It's an island group. It belongs to Spain. It is located off of the coast of Morocco, and it's pretty far away from a potential danger zone. Unless the war escalates to something real crazy, you're probably safe here. You're safer here than you would be in, say, Bulgaria, than you would be in Germany, France, right? This is a pretty peaceful place. This is probably a safe place. And on top of that, it's also a good place to set up a company. You can qualify for a 4% corporate tax rate, which is a very good deal. It's the lowest in the European Union. And like I said, it's pretty easy to get residency. The cost of living is cheap. The weather's good. The people are nice. It's more of a collectivist society than anywhere in Europe that I've been. Seriously, this is the most laid-back place there is in Europe. The mentality of people is different than on the mainland. and that's why I decided to buy a property here. And that's why if you have a European Union passport, or even if you're like from Canada, America, you might want to consider moving here, because again, it's a pretty safe place, right, geographically speaking. Next up, we have Uruguay, another country in South America, which is an interesting bet. Uruguay is probably the most European country in South America. So many Europeans have moved to Uruguay. It offers the highest standard of living in whole South America. It is considered probably the safest country along with Chile. Uruguay is great, it's clean, it's European, you have a lot of nice architecture, and you have a lot of Europeans living there, and more Americans are moving to Uruguay too. It's an interesting place. On top of that, Uruguay embraces sort of like a territorial tax system, so some overseas income might not be taxed, so that's a definite benefit. It's not as good as what we have in Paraguay, the other country that's also located in South America, but Uruguay is interesting, offers a higher standard of living, often considered as also the cleanest country in South America. You want to look into Uruguay. Now, getting residence in Uruguay, you can achieve it by proving income. There are a couple of other options available as well, and the tax situation is not horrible, so for people that want to minimize their taxes, there are some things you can do. And again, what's important here is Uruguay's geographic location. Let's say the war escalates to an extreme. You're again in a place where most likely you're safe. It's not like you're in Ukraine. It's not like you're in Germany, right? You're far away from the action. And in terms of military, Uruguay is not part of NATO. Uruguay is a neutral country. Uruguay is a good place. It's a safe bet, I think. The last country is Tanzania. Tanzania is another interesting place for a number of reasons. Tanzania, again, like Uruguay, because of its geographic location, very unlikely to be affected by a world war. Then Tanzania, like if you want to get a residence permit, it's actually easier than for a lot of other countries. And generally speaking, it's pretty easy to get a residence permit in many African countries. And Tanzania is definitely part of that list. Tanzania has one of the most beautiful beaches. Just take a look at the island of Zanzibar. I have friends living on the island of Zanzibar. They're very happy. It's very laid back. Yes, it is a developing country, but because of its laid backness, it's probably a good place to be. And like all the other countries that we mentioned, Tanzania is a neutral country. It's unlikely that a country like Ghana or Tanzania will participate in something like a world war. Now that I gave you the top 7 best countries to be in before or during World War III, do you have any more countries that you would like us to discuss in the future video? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. If you need help with obtaining a residence permit in any of the countries that we discussed here, please feel free to reach out to us. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you on the next video.